with the clerk here?
Sure. Kia ora koutou, me kareki a tātou te mata o tātou hui. Tau mai rā ko te Māori. Ko te Māori noho, ko te Māori tū. Ko te Māori ānuku, ko te Māori ārangi. Ko te Māori āio, ko te Māori o ngā tupuna. Tau mai rā ko te Māori ora, uhi wero, uhi taia, haramai te toki, haumi e, hui e, tāki. Kia ora koutou.
Thank you. All right, any notices or apologies? I have one apology from Alan Dick, I think, for the entire day. Is that correct? Okay.
Yeah, with your indulgence, from 12 to 12:30, I'll just take leave from the meeting, but I'll be back after that.
We will not eat your lunch.
No, he's going for a fancy lunch appointment.
I think we should keep his lunch. He was sit out there and when it's dry it all up, make him eat it when he gets back.
Yes. Is there a seconder?
Chair,
For that motion, no.
I have to leave at lunchtime to Tunley.
Okay. Have we accept those apologies? Somebody move to accept those apologies?
I'll move.
Councillor Bailey, seconded. Councillor Barker, all in favor?
Aye.
Accepted. Any conflict of interest declarations? Any of those? We will be having a few guests here in the course of the day, but let's keep moving along here. Minutes of the meeting of 19 June. About 10 pages of those. Anybody have any comments, Ray? Accuracy? Someone like to move accepting them? Patton? Seconded?
I'll
Councillor Graham? All in favor?
Aye.
Any matters arising from those minutes? Councillor Bailey?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. With respect to page 6, update on farm environmental management plans, I'd like to see included in our follow-ups from previous meetings report an update on the outstanding FEMPs, whether they've actually been submitted or whether we've taken enforcement action and the numbers on them, so that we can keep an update. We can keep an eye on what's going on there.
Any other matters arising? Okay. Act on that, do we? We do? All right.
Oh, the follow-ups.
No.
Oh, no, not matters arising.
Yeah, let's just go to follow-ups here.
Sorry, my apologies.
Some minutes out of the way. Follow-ups, page 3 of the agenda. No issues. Any of that material? Going once? Going twice? Would someone move?
I'll move the follow-ups.
Barker moves the follow-ups. Seconder for that. Councillor Bevan, thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. All right. Call for minor items of business not on the agenda. Councillor Bailey.
Tomato mushrooms. Tomato mushrooms consent hearing.
Mushrooms. Okay.
Wairau Regional Park.
Park. Peter.
H-Pads.
Buds.
Ooh. Big one, that one.
Any other? I don't know if this is the proper process or not, but I'm going to propose that a short minor item on the public excluded agenda, tank.
Oh, what's that?
Act 17, 16.
Adding that to 15, yes. Okay. All right. That was it? Okay, so we're on to our decision item, Future Farming Charitable Trust.
Chair, while he's doing that, I understand today is the day that we set the price for the report.
That is where our chief executive is today, correct?
Is he? Yeah. So when that is done, I was wondering whether we could get an update straight away so councillors could have an update on that.
Why don't we check in at maybe the lunch break or something and see if he can phone in, or he might be
Who will
able to
do that
phone
for
into
us?
the public.
Liz, will you do that?
I won't be here at lunchtime, sorry.
Oh, you're having lunch with Fenton?
I'm having lunch with Perry and his guests.
I'm not having lunch with Perry.
And you're not having...
All right, we'll see, we'll get something
Can
organised.
you get someone, because it would be quite good for us to get it before the newspaper, before the Radio New Zealand gets it.
Yep, understood, okay, we'll work on that. Clinic board is yours.
Great, thank you very much. Good morning. So this is following on from the paper that we had last week at Council with regards to the trust. So this is the last part of the Future Farming Trust, which is the funding deed. And the purpose of the paper today is to provide the funding deed draft for your review and hopefully for recommendation to Council on the 28th of August for their approval and sign-off. A quick summary of the background is that in the long-term plan, there was $650,000 over 3 years given to as seed funding to initiate the Future Farming Initiative, which is now going to be the Future Farming Charitable Trust. And what we're proposing is that we have 2 instalments of that payment that be given to the Future Farming Trust with a number of conditions, of course, in reporting back to Hawke's Bay Regional Council with regards to the appropriateness and the use of the funds. The first instalment being $330,000 and then the remainder in July of next year. The funding deed was attached for your review, so without any further...
Take that as read?
Yeah, take that as read, basically, unless there's any questions.
Are there any questions, Councillor Bailey?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I suppose this would more be a question for Jessica, but unfortunately she's not here. The page 17, you've got the annual financial year be the period ending 30th of June. Is that annual financial reports required to be tied in with anything to do with our annual reporting? Or is it entirely separate?
It's the financial year end that we're taking as our financial year end.
Right. Okay. So there shouldn't be any issues with the timing of that. It's just the timing of it, and it fits in with what we're doing. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. It just made most logical sense. Plus, it also was based on the same model that was used for the biodiversity as well. So it just tied in.
Thank you.
What a lot of time, Chair. Just being on the precautionary principle, we're discussing a trust, which I understand you're nominated to be a trustee of, and therefore have...
We voted at the last meeting to appoint me to the trust.
That's right. And I just think it would be for the sake of, because you are to be appointed to the trust, and we're considering a trust, I think it would be appropriate because of the perception of a possible conflict of interest, that for this item you should step out of the chair and let the rest of the committee make the decision.
I'm happy to do that.
I just think...
Councillor Bevan, would you like to preside?
I'm just being the complete pedant here, that's all.
Extremely wise.
What?
Extremely wise.
No, it's a good point, Councillor Barker. That is a good point.
Thank you, Councillor Barker, thrust into the limelight. So are there any further discussion points on the
Any questions?
funding deed?
I'll move the paper.
Favour,
I'll
do we
second the
consider?
paper.
Thank you. Do you wish to speak?
I spoke last time on this. I think this is one of the most important initiatives that we've taken. I've saved the front page of the paper that we discussed last time because I thought the vision was so apt and so pertinent to where we want to go forward in the future. It's so well written. So this is a major endeavour. I don't think any other region's taken on an endeavour such as this, and it just gets everybody into the same waka, and hopefully it will have tremendous results for our region going forward. Strongly support it.
I strongly support the paper too, for all the reasons that the chair of the Regional Council has supported. I'd just like to add that I think it is a wonderful piece of intellectual thought, drawing together a range of other strands and making a council useful in an area that a lot of people would not have seen the council as having a responsibility for. But when you think about the environment and you think about responsibility as a council, it's what it should be doing. And I just think it's been a remarkable piece of intellectual work, and I think this council will be very proud of it at the end of it, as will be the author.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Councillor Bailey?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm in huge support of this initiative. I see in a paper later on today where we talk about a regional response to climate change. The Future Farming Trust is a big part of our response to the council's response to dealing with climate change, and because our farming community requires that information to be coming through, which is, I think, what's going to come through the trust. So, Chair.
Councillor.
So I would just note, as indicated in the paper, that the trustees are meeting tomorrow. So we'll be getting underway as of tomorrow. We'll be electing a chairman and vice chairman, and presumably gratefully accepting the contribution from the Regional Council and getting on with business.
Any other speakers? Councillor Curt.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Just in regard to the future operation of the Trust and its various outputs, we've had other manifestations of council or entities fostered and supported by council previously, and I refer to entities such as tourism, economy, etc., where we've launched them, they've gone off, and somehow they've gone beyond the grasp and appreciation of council in terms of current business. And I'd like to suggest that there is a very strong connection made and regular reporting inward to the Trust from the likes of our catchment teams, that our biodiversity people are having regular conversations with the Trust, so that we can get line of sight from many angles on the work of the Trust, and the Trust likewise is able to add its view and experiences across the organisation. And it's something I think we've tended to be remiss in the past when launching these with great gusto, these entities, and they move beyond the council without any great connection. So hopefully that can be followed through and we do better in that regard with this Trust.
Thank you, and I'm sure that's something that the trustees will think about. I'd like to say a few words as well. I've always been strongly supportive of this as an initiative. The success of this initiative will be entirely dependent upon its ability to communicate with farmers. And hopefully the trustees will sit down and think very carefully about how that's going to happen. Any other speakers? Okay, I'll put the motion now. Those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against no. Carried. Thank you. I will resign.
I quite liked you in the chair there, Peter.
Yeah. I think you're heading for a promotion there, Councillor.
Very brief.
It's heading to the fishing.
All right, so this brings us to the State of the Environment Report. Drew, are you going to take us through this?
I will lead in, thank you. Yes. Kia ora, good morning. The science team obviously have the role of monitoring the state of the environment on behalf of the region through the Regional Council, and they prepare technical reports on a regular basis that report on the state and trends of different aspects of the environment. So the technical reports that underpin this summary report that's been prepared will be ready largely in December this year, but what has been done to enable some comprehensive reporting at this time is we've prepared a summary report using the best available information that we have to enable a synopsis of the regional environmental issues. So we've prepared that for you, and that's available here as the summary report in draft, so awaiting your feedback. It's a 36-page report. It contextually has an upfront introduction from our Chief Executive, James Palmer, and then is broken into the various domains that give an indicative report on the state, broken down into those domains. And the intent through developing this report was to try and give a little bit more of a personal connection to people who are reading the report, to write it in plain language, and in a way that the general population can take on board some of those technical elements that have been identified through the scientists' studies, and to deliver it in a way which is engaging and meaningful. So I'm happy to take any feedback.
Any questions?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Drew. I have to admit that I haven't actually gone through this with a fine-tooth comb. When would you like to have some feedback? If there's anything we'd like to, when would you like to have any feedback by?
So, Councillor, very happy to give you a bit of time to reflect back to us. We are very keen to get this locked and loaded and completed and published. So ideally, if the next sort of day or two you could send us any thoughts,
okay,
it would be much
that's
appreciated.
Fine. No, that's cool.
Any comments? I'll offer one comment, just scanning through it. I thought that it was, this summary document was missing a kind of a summation of that drew out of all the following material. Here are the, I don't know, 6, 10 things that we think we're doing just fine on, and here are the 8 or 10 things that we're worrying about. I mean, it just seemed like it just dove right into this air, water, series of reports without really any kind of summation from anyone, either our chairman or the chief executive or someone, as to, okay, so what does it all roll up to? What is the state? What are the things that we think we're getting a grip on, and where are the chief priorities going ahead? I recognize it is a report looking backward, but nevertheless, I think it'd be helpful. Other comments on this? Then I guess knowing that we have 24 hours to 48 at best for any further comment.
You available Friday, Drew?
We're simply, what are we doing? Simply accepting the summary report. Receiving it. Someone move that?
I'll move that.
Councillor Barker. Seconded by Councillor Wilson. All those in favor? Aye. Approved. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Well, where's my speech? Speech to give.
Perry?
He's a good chair, isn't he?
Peter, I'd say.
Alan Dick would be proud.
He would be. You actually stopped Rick speaking. That's a first.
Councillors, just while the guests are getting ready, I've just been texting James. He's planning to email you all an update on the port shares later today. So I've just asked him maybe if he texts me, and I can let you know that the email's in your inbox.
I appreciate that, because we could do that. It's public information, isn't it? Is it public?
I did.
Sorry?
But the share price,
Yeah, will that be public?
it's not public information there, no.
Like a lot of people.
He'll be sending some more information later today. I'll let you know. If he texts me, I'll let you know that it's in your inbox, and you can have a look.
We'll figure it out. Yes, sir. Proceed.
I seek the indulgence of the chair to welcome our guests.
Yes.
as befits the relationship between Ngāti Kahungunu and also Ngaitau. And if you'd allow me, I'll do it
Please.
in the other language. Hoi anō aku nei rangatira o tēnei o ngā komiti o Te Matawa Māui, te kauni hera, tēnei te mihi ki o koutou. Anei rā, e o tāu nei manuhiri, e tau kei roto I tēnei tō tātou nei rohe. Just seeking your permission to welcome these guests amongst us. Ka huri mai au ki a kōrua rā, me ki rā tāki timu waka, no tāu a tēnei o Kahungunu, a tēnei te mihi ki o koutou, mai rā kei roto tūnui o tēnei whare o. Me ki rā o ngā iwi whānui o te rohe nui, te rohe whānui o te Matawa Māui, e mihi nei ki o koutou. Anei rā ngā rangatira me ki rā ke whakahaere he ngā rautaki, e pāna ki tēnei o tā tātou nei rohe. Nō reira, anei rā he reo he māngai e mihi rā ki a kōrua. Haria mai rā, mauria mai ngā mate e nō nei ke rungi o koutou pokohiwi. Whāriki hea me ki rā I o koutou e tangi, amata ua tangi, kia mihi kia rātou poroporaki kia rātou. Nō reira rātou ngā mate hoki atu, haere atu rā. Hoki mera ki a kōra Mahaanui Kurataiao haramai. Haramai me ki rā ngā pukenga kei rungi o koutou, ngā mātauranga kei rungi a kōrua. A kia whāriki hea, mā wai, hei tā kōha mai mo tēnei ngārohe me ki rā tai atu ki ngā tangata whenua nohona I ke roti ki tēnei. Nō reira, tōrei tāku nei mihi kia kōrua. Anei rā tātāu me ki rā kia kōriro ki tēnei kaupapa whakahirahira, tēnei kaupapa whānui hoki ngā hua mā koutou o ngai tahu, tā koutou tā kōha mai rā ki roti a kahunga. Nō reira tēnei te mihi tēnā kōrua. Thank you, Chair. I don't apologise for the 25 slide pack or the audit report that is sent to you and part of your paper set. That was deliberate so that we could shorten this down because it is in sense not a decision paper, it is an informational paper. What I do though in terms of page 23 of the slide pack, and that was the one pager, is merely to highlight some key points. Our Māori Standing Committee, some many months back, directed me as Te Pou Whakarai to seek and request that our two guests from Ngaitahu, the Chief Executive of Mahaanui Kurataiao, Tānia Wāti, who's seated to my left, and also Kyle Davis, who is the manager of Mahaanui Taiao, to seek if they would come up and share with us what has been happening down in Ngaitahu in the South Island since 2007. Wonderful example of how where iwi groups pull together, it can produce something not only of great value to iwi and to tangata whenua, but also the fallout from that is in terms of the business that we as council undertake. Yesterday was a big day for the Māori Standing Committee. It was also their last meeting day, and it was an opportunity for us to also acknowledge and to say to our chair of many years, the last 8 as I understand it, to thank him for a job well done. But the afternoon, and particularly 3 hours, was spent working with our guests to see whether or not such an entity as this could be established across Ngāti Kahungunu and in terms of our Hawke's Bay region. What will happen at 11 a.m. this morning is that we will depart before then. An invitation has been sent out to all of the councils, including Taupo, Rangitike, for they to attend to be presented Mahaanui Kurataiao in terms of the slide pack presentation that's in front of you. More informational, because at the end of the day this depends on whether or not iwi is able to pick this up and to take it forward and to see how wide that might capture in terms of the constituency of a Mahaanui Kurataiao type within our region. Great discussion yesterday. Where it landed at the end of all of that was great acknowledgement of what has been happening down in Ngaitahu. And the discussion now will be picked up by Here Taunga, Tai Whenua, who are prepared to bring everyone together again at a date to be determined to see whether or not iwi and its constituency can work through feasibility of this to the point where it might become established as an environmental management advisory service within Hawke's Bay region.
I don't intend to go through any of the slides in there. What you would note is in slide 38, there's an expanse there. Well, it's actually page 38 of your document, which illustrates what the role of Mahaanui Kurataiao is down in the Ngaitahu area. And on page 44 of your pack is one where there are ancillary services which fall off Mahaanui Kurataiao's work, and you will see within their benefits not only to the council but also to other constituencies down around the Waitaha region, around wider Canterbury. I'm going to stop there at this point and say, in summary, our guests have brought us something that works well down in Ngaitahu. We've put it up in front of all of the iwi groups here that collected yesterday, and we had a good audience. And that audience, under the auspices of Here Taonga Tai Whenua, will be moving this forward to see whether or not we can find some feasibility in landing the concept of an advisory service across the wider Hawke's Bay. That's an iwi decision. To that extent, this is informational for this committee. I thought it most appropriate out of courtesy to our guests, but also in terms of the specifics of this initiative, to bring it to your audience. So off the back of the slide deck through the chair and also the audit report in front of you, you may well have some questions, and the best ones to answer that sit to my side.
Welcome, Tanya and Kyle. Would you like to comment before we open it up to questions?
No, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, let's go for that. Are there questions? Councillor Bailey.
Thank you, Chair. Kia ora, Piri. Thank you for welcoming our guests in such an outstanding manner. It's not the other language, it's the preeminent language of Aotearoa, so thank you for that. My question, I got two questions. One is, you said after yesterday's presentation, local Te Whenua and iwi and that are getting together. Was their response high on the positive, or just sort of lukewarm? Or was it they were really keen on the idea, or?
We've got a few others who are in here. I will answer first, and then Tanya might have her own reflection.
As always.
I think what we saw yesterday was probably what we expected to see, and that is great acknowledgement of the initiative as it operates down in Ngaitahu. I think it comes back here in terms of the dynamics that exist within our own tangata whenua groups here as to can they work together collectively in terms of this initiative, which is about, and I think as Tanya put it yesterday, it's about your relationships. Can you work with one another towards an outcome?
Yep. And then Mike, thank you for that. Mike, did you?
Yeah, well, I deal with a lot of iwi groups throughout the Motu, and get people when I go up north, they say, oh, it must be wonderful to be in Kahungunu, you never argue. Yeah, right. And I thought the same thing about Ngaitahu. And our guest said yesterday, you know, there has been extreme debate down there before these sort of this initiative was settled. The good thing about, and this is the third time, I had dinner with them the night before with Pierre on the Monday night, heard it yesterday. This is something that can streamline the consent process. Our people too often object emotively and haven't been through the processes, they don't understand the processes. So here is something that possibly we can set up in a slightly different manner in Kahungunu with the treaty groups, the regional planning committee, so they become the experts and advise. They don't do all, they don't make the decisions, but they put it in a form where our people can understand, and then it can be on the basis of streamlining something. And I just thought the whole thing was so good. And it was some of our people, I think they felt threatened possibly the people that are most au fait with resource consents is the likes of Marae and Ngaio, and they had no objection. It was more the dumb ones like me saying, oh, you're taking away my privileges type of thing. But I just hugely admire the whole process yesterday and how you related back to your tangata whenua. You know, you don't tell them what to do. You just say, here is the information. Kei a koutou.
So kia ora, e mihi mahana ki a koutou. So yes, we still have those dynamics even till this day on whether it will be boundary issues, all of that type of stuff, but that's for our office to deal with. It's not for council to deal with, and we're really clear with our messaging back to the people that we serve. Yesterday was interesting. I think the key thing that was trying to be pulled out of yesterday is we're only a tool. So, you know, it's a function. It's not, we don't speak on behalf of, we don't, you know, it's just a function that is used to support we in our area, our papatapu runanga, to respond to their requests, their environmental requests back to local TLAs within the set timeframes.
Yep, no, cool, thanks for that. So my second question is to our guests, and relates to me, to my mind, this was an initiative set up by yourself, or the tai whenua down your way, rather than something being imposed on you and being asked to do. So it was your own initiative to form this group because you saw the benefit of doing it rather than going through the old standard processes. So you're trying to break that cycle and make it easier for everyone to be able to deal with the relationships between tangata whenua and the local authorities and such. Would that be fair to say?
Correct. So back in from before 2007, you know, the iwi had been settled, but all information was still going to our papatapu runanga or our marae, and you know, our office of manager, or we only just called them administrators back then, they didn't have the capability and the capacity to deal with environment, health, education. They were just forwarding emails, and so we have a group, and to be fair, they were all part of the treaty settlement that knew that we have to come together because we can't manage the influx that's coming in right now. And from there, so back in 2015, in an example of, you know, supporting our hapu or our papatapu runanga, there was varying of about, for the amount of land mass that we look after, was about 1,000 resource consents coming in from the regional council. Today we've got that, we created triggers on priorities. What is actually your priority here? You know, what do you actually want to look at? And we pulled off all of the consents and worked through them, and today I think we only process 125. So that's the benefits, and we were lucky, ECAN down our ways, they supported the mana whenua to put together an iwi management plan, and most of our responses, so that's part of a mandate for us through this iwi management plan, through the policies in there. So with many of the resource consents that we tune through, if it's inconsistent with the iwi management plan, then we take it back. Yeah.
Excellent. No, thank you for that.
And just another point as well, the configuration with that trigger system relied quite significantly on basically a well-resourced internal Māori policy team that was very in touch with the consent management and things like that in our team as well. So you ended up with essentially that system of exchange, information exchange, and consistency within to meet the timeframes.
Just to follow up from that, Chair, you talked a bit about the interaction you have with the consenting process, which is really cool. Is that same sort of interaction happen with the planning processes that you have?
Yes.
Yep.
Correct.
Perhaps just to add to that and to sort of take my council hat off and put my other hat back on. So up in the Wairoa area, Tātou to Wairoa, it's a PSGE, but it's connected in terms of marae and hapu. Iwi hapu marae, they shudder at these things that are coming in, not just through the door, but through the windows, in terms of consent applications and the like. That is similar across every one of our hapu marae entities across this region. So they're not well managed, resourced, responded to at this point in time. We need something better than what we have.
Yeah, absolutely. Councillor Curtin.
Kia ora, welcome, Tania, Carol. Great to see you here from a long distance. Look, some things get lost in translation. I wonder whether you can help me with some of these terms which I haven't quite got my head around yet. Papatupu, runanga, takiwi. Can you give us a view on Papatupu, please?
Yeah, sure. So, within the context of the iwi Ngai Tahu, the way in which the constituent parts of Ngai Tahu had to assemble themselves to perform administrative functions with respect to the claim settlement resulted in the creation of these entities called Papatipu Runanga, which essentially is Papatipu is the long-standing presence in a particular area. Takiwa is like a territory or a region or whatever. Rohi is relatively interchangeable with that. Runanga is a Ngai Tahu word for council. So these assemblies were essentially modelled on the original 1850 Ngai Tuahuriri model of assembling a council, which essentially had council powers over its own reserves in the Canterbury region. And so that model was brought forward to have these modern day assemblies of basic things you might know as hapu or whatever. So what I did see yesterday is essentially in Ngāti Kahungunu you've got variations on that form of manifestation in terms of assembly. Assembly of multiple whānau, essentially. And so these assemblies deal with their own affairs. They vote for their representatives. It's a very democratic system. They also pass decisions on what position they should have in relation to a particular issue, the direction of their own developments and things like that in their area.
Great, thank you. Just to follow further on, you've obviously done a bit of homework on the Regional Council and our Regional Planning Committee, which is unique in Aotearoa, so it's a structure that it has significant challenges. Would you see the structure providing or having input to the likes of the Regional Planning Committee? Has it got a function? At the moment we have contracted advice coming to the Regional Planning Committee and the Mana Whenua group particularly as part of that. Would you see it being functional with the RPC? Have you got a view on that?
So down in Christchurch we have a thing called the Tuia group. And the Tuia group is around the Māori policy. So there's two levels of the Tuia. One of the levels is the governance level, which you have councillors and the 10 Papatipu Runanga that sit within the region of ECAN. They get together once a quarter, and so that's that governance strategic head. So the 10 chairs, the mana-to-mana relationship. And then underneath that you have a working group, so that would be, that's once a month, once every 6 weeks, called Te Pai Hiringa, and that's when ECAN planners or resource consents or compliance, they'll come and have a conversation, and it's quite a full agenda, and they have specific discussions through there. But when it comes to anything above, it sits at that governance level with our Papatipu Runanga chairs and the councillors, and that's where they sit and talk through any issues that might be happening with them. Did that answer your question?
Well, yeah, we could probably have an extensive conversation on how that potentially could be manifested in this region.
There are a number of other services that such an entity could provide to a committee or assembly like that as well. It depends on what's of value, what would be found to be of use to the committee's proceedings. Yeah.
The final question, Mr Chair, is around kaitiaki, and I noticed a mandated kaitiaki committee as a part of that structure, and I'm worried about that given our experience with our 9 treaty partners around that, in terms of this very, very closely held, jealously guarded kaitiaki over...
But is that home too?
Yes. So can you give us a view on how you manage that relationship and that the emotion that goes with kaitiaki and any appearance that you may be taking on kaitiaki for someone else?
Cool. So we have, what happens is there's many areas which we called shared interest, you know, and instead of the council staff or council dealing with shared interest, that comes into our office. So an example might be they may, a couple of runanga might share the same same river as a shared interest, and they always say, well, so I'll give a Tuahiwi Kaikoura example. On the Huranui River, they'll always refer to each other and say, what do they think? You know, can you go to them and see what they think, because they're part of this as well. And then a Kaikoura would say the same. So sometimes it's varying information. So, but we still have to do that exchange to say, well, Kaikoura's come back with this, and they thought, well, it's not really what we think. But then they're really clear. Well, they're actually closer to the river than us. They're on the river more than us. So we're not quite sure if we're happy about it, but they hold the kaitiaki more because that's where they're closest to. You know, so because the boundaries are very differing. So, but that's for our job. So Mahaanui Kurataiao, yes, we have some technical support, but our main role is communication. You know, that's hugely communicating with councils, communicating with runanga, getting the feedback, just constant communication.
And we manage that interface as well. So council staff, different teams, river engineers, whoever it is, who are making a request for information or feedback on a proposal or an applicant or whatever, essentially that information packet is analysed and digested by us and then taken to, and we interface with those mandated kaitiaki from those assemblies and glean that initial feedback or what have you. So we bear the brunt of any emotive utterances that might take place with respect to a proposal, and whether it needs to go further beyond that, it just ends up being quite an effective method to interface with council. So you're not sending a green staff member fresh out of university, an engineer or a planner or whatever, into the belly of the beast as such. We provide that intermediary service and facilitate that engagement and attempt to do so quite efficiently.
I think you could do the Mohaka River for us.
So we have an area down home called Waihora, and wow, when that comes across my desk, I just think, oh, great. So that's 6 Papatipu Runanga interests. It's got a co-governance board over it. It's got a working group. It's got water zone committees. It's got everything. But then we need to be really clear. We're here to operations only. There's a whole heap of stuff that sits over it, but actually, what is the core function and what is the core response? And that's really what our job is to sort all of that out for people and then brief to get a response.
Councillor Barker.
Yes, I just want to respond to Pitty's point. I've had the opportunity to have a look at the Bay of Plenty Regional Council, Waikato, a number of others. And if there's one lesson I've learned out of that, is that very often, for example, on the Bay of Plenty, there's been a mismatch of resources. So it's all very well figuring out on one side of the equation what it is that you want to do, but if the other isn't in sync, it's going to be an issue. So I welcome the discussion with Tangata Whenua to look at what it is they want to do and how they wish to do it. But we also have to have a discussion internally here, and our own internal discussion has to be linked in to what iwi are thinking about. Otherwise, we'll get 2 different structures and it'll be a mismatch and things won't work as people want. So The next thing is, I think we've got to be clear about is what is our objective here. And quite often these conversations, things get down to the operational level, and people see them operationally, but we haven't given enough thought to what are we trying to do here strategically. So I want to make sure we have that conversation, and if we don't get that, we will wind up with something that just doesn't quite fit. But I'm interested and excited by the fact that we're actually starting the conversation, which we really haven't done before. So this is really,
The question is?
it was a question of just making sure that.
So I can give you an example. I mean, our two Ngāi Tahu councillors are going to come off soon because we went to Crown and they says no, you can't have it, which is fine, to have those members. But I've sat at the table many times with the councillors who have appreciated the relationship that they now have with the two Ngāi Tahu sitting at the table and having an understanding of our two Ngāi Tahu who sit as councillors, understanding of the processes of what your guys' role is, and for them to understand the processes of what our role is. So if one of the major things at a strategic level would be the honanga that you would create with amongst yourselves to have better understanding amongst each other. Yeah.
Councillor Bevan.
Thank you, and thank you for coming and talking to us and answering some of our questions. I'm interested in the whole business of gaining confidence and gaining a mandate from the people that you hear from and report to. What was the process that you embarked upon in order to achieve that?
So in 2000, I can only speak about from 2015 till now because that's when I came on board. We have a clear, we have a statement of intent. We started with a statement of intent of what the expectations on both sides, from the organisation to the Papatipu Runanga. For some Runanga it was all just too much, words on a paper. Then we got a 2-page mandate of this organisation will do our resource consents, we'll work on our district plan, and we simplified it down. So that went on the letterhead through their council meeting, I suppose, a Runanga meeting on a Sunday. And then from there we put in engagement protocols. How do you want us to engage? What does that actually look like? What do you want us to touch and what do you not want us to touch? So we've got some real paperwork behind that, but the Runangas also understand, because back in 2007 they all invested $10,000 on it into creating this business. They understand if we fail, they fail, and then everything goes back to them. So it hasn't always been flowers and roses, and it's certainly not as every day, but we ensure that the people we talk to has gone through their their hapu-based runanga, and we've got a signed mandate with their letterhead, with their signature, with their chair's signature. These are the people we're directed to.
Perhaps to add to that, I think there's some levels of how this has been constructed. So if you were to ask the question about who owns Mahaanui Kurataiao, then the answer would be the 6 Papatipu do. Is there governance structure that is in place that reinforces that? Yes, there is. They're answerable to that, and that creates the relationship in response to the questions. Perhaps coming back to the point raised by Councillor Barker, it is about the sequencing and the landing of this as we move forward. And behoves me to acknowledge the Māori Standing Committee who directed our unit inside Council to engage and to bring this up here so iwi could look at it. The step and sequence of this is if iwi picked this up, gain the confidence to actually sort of move forward with it, then it follows a discussion with Council in terms of how that would work to evolve a model that is a collaborative one.
So the councils that you work with, the perception on their end at this point, I mean, often we're in a situation where the frustration of all involved is that there's a clock running, but there's a concern that we have not consulted enough, and we need to do this, and we've made a change, we need to go back, etc. So from the standpoint of the council, are they basically in the posture of saying, look, if we've handed the issue off to you, we can expect that 6 weeks later or whatever, 6 months later or whatever, you are going to come back, you are going to have processed all the relevant voices that need to be heard, and secured a consensus or a point of view or whatever on the matter at hand. And is that where you've gotten to? And are the councils too dependent on that? Is there, you see what I'm saying? I mean, it'd be an awfully convenient situation, wouldn't it?
A one-stop shop.
To be able to say on tank or anything, you know, that here you go. This is your issue to deal with, your problem to resolve for us. Call us when you're ready, and we can get on with other business. Is that the attitude? Is that
You're referring to a potential sort of palm-off scenario,
Exactly.
type thing, right? So, look, there is still perhaps a culture of that to some extent, but it is being alleviated as time moves forward. So you can only really essentially make use of the instruments that you have available to you and have been presented. So the change that has been seen is that we are but one set of methodologies to achieve council's ability to observe things like meaningful consultation, evidence of consultation, adequate taking into account XYZ, iwi management plans and things like that. And so with respect to the Canterbury region and our mandated functions as an organisation, I'm pretty confident that we're among the best of those methods. So there's the more direct things. There's the ringing up someone, you know, down the road or whatever it is. There's the Māori policy team who can attempt their own form of interface, and then the additional instrument is a thing like us, a non-profit owned by the constituent Runanga, and resourced via service level agreements with councils to be able to deliver within the timeframes. So there are those scenarios where there are the palm-offs, or at least the perception of it, but there are also scenarios where councils are achieving the best possible meaningful consultation on decision-making matters.
just a follow-up? I mean, we are now dealing, for example, with a very complicated plan change, where I guess my perception would be that the members of our regional planning committee would feel like it is perfectly their responsibility to go through line by line, look at subsection 13B, subparagraph 3, and quarrel over the wording. And that's where we are. I mean, that's where we are in our Roy here. You've moved people, you appear to have moved people away from that. There's a deferral to your substantive nous to work through these issues on behalf of. Is that?
Correct.
So there's a clear sense of what governance is and what
operational and exactly.
Correct.
Strategic.
So in an example, we're working on 2 district plans. We've been on plan change 7. We're about to start plan change 1. We're really clear that our reports aren't technical. Our reports come from mana whenua, so we understand what's required. We draft it up. We give it to the runanga. We sit with them. We talk through it. And then they'll either say yes or no, or can you add this and this, and then we deliver back to council.
It's a form of, I guess, third-partyism in that we're an engine that they own and have a sense of ownership over, and therefore a potential elevated level sense of trust as well. And we're a mixed staff base as well, so there are, Tanya, for example, holds memberships and whakapapa to several of our major Runanga assemblies, myself included. I'm from the iwi, but I'm from further south, and we have Pakeha staff, planners and the like that are very capable in digesting and analysing XYZ. And so they're essentially in receipt of a slightly more independent view on the semantics of plan wording and things like that, rather than say perhaps a council staff member with that badge. There's always going to be that automatic suspicion with respect to Māori engagement with Crown manifestations. So whilst we're resourced by council to be able to perform that service back to them, we're also in that cloud of an elevated sense of trust as well. And with being a non-profit and having financial transparency and things like that, is an elevated level of confidence on the part of the funder and the council.
Did you?
Question. Yeah. Yes, so the Māori saying matu huru huru te manu karere, which means, Tania, can you give just a breakdown of how you are funded? And then second part of the thing is, can you just give Kyle, quick thing on that, your mapping of the water takes? So say Tania first.
How we're funded?
Yeah.
We're funded through service level agreements that we have with council. You've got our audit report. So Christchurch City, we've also been through a roof whenua as well. We've been through an earthquake, so we get 80k a quarter for fee for service, and we report back to that on what we've spent that money on. For ECAN, our regional council, we have a retainer with ECAN, being that the resource consents down there, you've only got 10 days to respond, but by the time they put it in the system, we've predominantly got 5 days to respond. So we have a retainer because if there's an expectation that someone can respond to something in 5 days, then there should be an expectation that someone will be sitting there ready to look at what that looks like. We also, part of our other major fund, we have other service level agreements with our district councils, and they're predominantly funded by a schedule, so there's no quantum funding. It's funded by a schedule, whether it's meetings, whether it's resource consents, anything to do with the natural resources. We are also currently working on the Kaikoura coastline, so we do environmental, we do all the cultural requirements there. So
for Transport Infrastructure Recovery Alliances, Transport Alliances as well. So a mixture of SLAs and also cost recovery from private clients, pretty large scale ones now and again.
So we, it's not just councils we work with, so we work with the Crown agencies like Kiwi Rail and
Ministry of Education,
but we also work with private developers who might be developing subdivisions within a wahitapu. Yeah.
So Carl, the second part of the question was, I was very impressed with that water takes map. Can you just give a quick illustration to the council laws?
So essentially, what we've tried to convey is that we're an instrument, a set of tools, and within our briefing capability, obviously we carry disciplines within our office like ecologists and planners, archaeology, environmental mapping, to be able to analyse XYZ. One of the strongest tools we have is around environmental mapping and the use of private sector mapping platforms to get a real sense of the quote-unquote cultural asset base, those things that are of cultural value that the iwi management plan addresses via its policies back into council planning. And so mapping is a huge part of what we do. It's a huge strength to our briefing capability, not only to our clients, but also back into our whānau and constituent papatipu runanga as well. A very, very useful tool.
And so that offer for you to immigrate back here, is that still on the table?
My grandfather's from up here, so I'll have to give the...
You're all from up here.
Kurataiao. I'm just aware of a partai to my left as well that's missed just through the chair.
Thank you.
Partai. Sorry, question through the chair from my left.
Thank you, and welcome to both. I have great respect for Ngāi Tahu, the maturity that the organisation has displayed in terms of, you know, you're a few years ahead of a lot of us in your learnings, and you're doing some great things. I hear wonderful things from some of my colleagues around ECAN as well, in terms of working with the Ngāi Tahu councillors and the respect that's come out of that process. So I do have a couple of questions, but in terms of this report, it's very difficult to, at a snapshot, work out what it's actually all about, and I think because it's a public paper, some translations would have been helpful. So I thank Councillor Curtin for his articulate question there, because it wasn't going to be an easy question. I've still got a couple of words I don't understand. But
There's multiple online dictionaries now these days.
So I'm interested. We have with our regional planning committee an instance where we've had those who hold mana o whenua coming to the committee with a recommendation, and the committee has gone against the words of mana whenua. So I'm interested in, have you had that instance and how do you get around it? And I'm also interested in how you work with the local government commission as well, because you're speaking about all the other you know, groups that you're integrating with. So just those two questions.
Sure. Okay. So there are those scenarios where we have some very passionate and vehement aunties and uncles that are really present themselves in certain contexts to drill down to the detail. We haven't had as many problematic scenarios in recent times, though, given how far we've come since Tanya taking over the helm with Mahaanui as well. In years previous, there were those scenarios where you did have some grandstanding and things like that, and we've always taken the view that when people get a sense of having been heard in those things, and we might not like what we're hearing, it normally plays out well. People can air dirty laundry or what have you. But after that, we can still follow processes, and our functions still play out within those contexts. And I'm sorry, the second question was around the local government commission. We don't really have to my knowledge, a direct interface with that commission.
You're speaking about boundaries a few times.
So we're talking about our own internal tribal Runanga boundaries. So these are actually a set of geographic spaces that are set in statute, and in some cases are often conveniently ignored by Crown manifestations now and again. Our own so staff interpretation and the interpretation of quite influential individuals within our assemblies tend to blur the lines a bit as well. But within the operational context, we provide a service and iron out some of those issues and make determinations on who's taking the lead and things like that. And just it's more around raising that level of comfort and confidence in the process and the individuals involved and the instrumentation that's being laid bare and made to work as well. So for those internal politics, those internal boundary issues or interest-related issues.
That's my job. I go and sort it out.
Yeah, and this is, and Tanya's all over the rohi of the six, and dealing directly with whoever she needs to deal with. Help us out with that, and we can get on with the mahi. Cool.
Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. I'm really impressed how you've laid out all your financials here, which makes it a lot easier to
It's the auditor. No.
understand what's happening. I'm just interested, MB, they gave you $100,000 to kick it off, basically what it sort of looks like here, and 17. Then they've gone missing in action, pretty much what they've done here. Is that correct, or?
No, so what happened then is we applied for a specific grant off MBIE, whether it was a Connect fund, so or a commercial advisory fund. So we look at the needs of our organisation, and if there is a fund available, then we might go for it, but it's not every year, it's a fund application. So that one specifically would have been a Connect fund for us to connect with one of our local hapu schools, which we did outreach programs to trigger the interest of science and environmental. So that's what that was about.
And then previously as well, the development of our environmental mapping platform as well, which is pretty good.
So just looking 1.4 million income in year end 18. I'm just looking at what the councils are putting in there. I mean, this is bigger than just us. This is
everybody.
This is a service for the region, right? But you know, we're spending north of 250,000 with the RPC as it stands now. And you know, we're still learning and we're still growing, but we're not producing. You know, it's quite frustrating that we can't nail some stuff. How would you add the value to that? I mean, you know, there's 70,000 we could offer you straight away. Get rid of the advisors. That'd be my first step. But I'm just wondering how we could, how this construct could actually add value to the regional planning committee, which I still believe in. I think it's got a future.
Yeah, I would personally, myself, I would probably think more about this council, because ECAN did with us down at Mahaanui back in 2011, 2012. Is to have for them to have a collective iwi management plan, and for that to be funded. So that's the policies it's going against. If they're not going against, but that's a policy it's working with. I think ECAN paid $107,000 for our iwi management plan, and I don't think they've ever looked back. And for 2 years, we had all of our people in the room bringing it in, and we had but our people weren't the ones writing it. We had got a specific person in to write, and they worked it, and we worked it to the gods, and we worked it to our catchments. But I understand there's different management plans, but I suppose collectively, how do you grab them up and to have our iwi management plan is clear issues, clear objectives, and clear policies. So that's probably one way.
So just in behind that, so just to put a bit more context around it, you've got the 8 iwi that sit at the top of the South Island, Te Tauihu.
We don't know about them.
That's why I'm saying it. And then you've got the expanse of Ngaitahu.
Neighbours.
That covers the balance of Te Waipounamu. And Mahaanui Kurataiao, and correct me if I'm wrong here, services an area under those 6 papatipu, which is at least a third of that expanse of Ngaitahu.
So there's 4 of us down by us. And so ECAN Local Council, ECAN Regional Council, they deal with 3 of us. Yeah.
3 entities
like ours.
And that puts it in perspective.
Yeah.
So the organization has existed since 2007. So you personally have been involved since 2015.
Correct. I came in under a restructure to restructure the business.
So the level of trust that is assumed in all of this, that your constituency trusts you to look after its interests, the councils that are hiring your services trust you to deliver reliably at the end of the day. That's taken 12 years to get to that point. Should we be realistically thinking here in Hawke's Bay that it's going to take us that kind of time if we were to pursue to arrive at the same level of operability?
There was no pre-existing model for these Papatipu Rūnanga to examine in the way that the iwi and council are examining us. So I'm hoping there might be.
Yeah.
It may not take. Hopefully, it may not take that long.
And so, though we started operating in 2007, and I came on board on 2015, part of a restructure and change management, and always acknowledge my predecessors, but they could do the work. You know, so they were writing into the plan changes, they were writing into the resource consents. That's not my job. My job was to focus on our people, build the capability and capacity, and build a team to support.
All I guess I'm saying is that it would seem to me that there must have been a fairly charismatic individual or small group of individuals who initially managed to get this off the ground.
correct. Auntie's amazing.
And, yeah, exactly. But also on both sides of the respective coins, there was value seen by councillors, council staff, in having
one-stop shop.
Having the one-stop shop, but also the seeing value in having an elevated, more meaningful sense of consultation, seeing written evidence, feedback, communication, things on letterhead coming through. Also, assessment of iwi management plans. Some of those RMA functions that we can ignore now and again here and there because we're not bound to them, we're not audited with respect to them. But so there was an expectation on the side of council. They wanted to see a little bit more of this. They realised that the rate-paying base, there was quite a large quantum that was what you could call the Ngāi Tahu family of interests, things we've invested into, subdivisions we make. We're also farmers. We have facilities, our marais pay rates, all that kind of thing. But then also the desire on the other side to by the mana whenua groups to actually, to try and influence some of these decisions that are being made with respect to those things that are their taonga and of value to them under Article 2 of the treaty. So there was some of those key individuals, but also a keen sense of seeing value in setting up a set of circumstances and processes to have some tangibility around these things as well, and consistency.
Just to follow up to your question, Chair, I think the more pertinent question is, and this comes back to what you were saying, Piri, about relationships and stuff, is that from when you were set up in 2007, I know that's 12 years ago, how long did it take, do you think it took before a suitable level of trust was built up that councils and yourselves could interact with your clients?
Okay, so I'm not even so 2007, yes it was, it did start in 2007. And at that time they probably only were really serving 2 of the runanga that own them, and that's why I was put on board to ensure that we were serving all 6. I'm saying 6 months. I say 6 months worth of relationships because these people are bloodly related to. So I'm their niece, that's why when this does start, that's that key person who's constantly, talking. But I will say probably 6 to 8 months, but I didn't have a weekend. I didn't have anything because that was my main focus, and to ensure that I was very visual and supporting in each of our 6 papatipu takiwā. Yeah.
Just to touch on the point of Kara's charisma and how this evolved from Genesis in 2007, I think we had the right collective of people who came together yesterday afternoon. And I have confidence in the leaders from iwi who came together to listen, to discuss, that they will take this forward. But in doing so, and this is about the tenure of how long does it take, the tenure is very dependent upon, I think, the goodwill of one from Ngāi Tahu. Everything that they've got at their disposal that records the pathways that they've taken to get to now, they're making available to us. The iwi management plan that sits in behind Mahaanui Kurataiao, and the most important part within there is the values. Everything is about the values inside that. It's a 400-page document. It's downloadable. We've downloaded it. But Tania, and I thank you both, Kyle, they've said we'll help you in whatever way we can. But at the end of the day, it becomes dependent upon iwi picking this up. I have some confidence that they'll look deeply into this and move it forward. That's certainly the assurance they've given yesterday.
Councillor Curtin, we have to wrap this up.
Thank you. Just about coming to an end. I just was interested to know, you described the structure as somewhat owned by the if you like, the shareholding runanga, if that's the way to describe it. And then yet you've got service agreements by the looks, and I'm just interested in the respective council revenue lines you've got. You've got service, are they service agreements? What are your deliverables and outcomes for your respective council funders? How does that work?
So actually, we're getting better with councils that actually me and a senior planner might go into councils and look at what their long-term plan might be, look at what their annual plan might be and go, we need to touch this, we don't need to worry about this, we need to touch this, you know, because that's that partnership. For me, understanding what's coming to me so I'm resourced to be able to do it. But we basically touch everything.
Okay, but there's to me there's a natural tension between your to your shareholders and to let me use the example of we're currently going through a major tank plan and we're getting that through the RPC. If the council were to engage you to facilitate the tank process, for example, there's a tension between what the council's expectation is and what the shareholders are saying. So there's this, they're paying you, but council's paying you. So when you meet in the middle, how do you manage that tension?
Well, we're really clear. We're owned by the Papatipu Runanga. So it would be like a councillor staff member working for you guys. Their job is to serve the council. Though they're a public servant, we're a hapu servant. There's many times when they don't agree, and there is many times where they don't agree. You've paid for the interface. We've given all the advice, and they've come back with all the mātauranga that they could possibly can. There's always divide between what it might be environmental Western science to mātauranga Māori. You know, there's always a divide, but there's always another project. We're really clear as well of some of the stuff we won't touch. Like if it was council, we wanted to empty our stormwater in one of our power sites, we'll be like, we don't even want to touch that. That's going to be a clear no. So, you know, and even though you're required to do that engagement, we'll just be really clear it's going to be a clear no. So, yeah.
There were scenarios previously where councils were going, well, actually, we're paying you to go and get us approval.
Yes.
Whereas versus we're actually being contracted to provide the best possible analytics and briefing via the disciplines we carry, and in working with council's own staff members to glean a position, and whether that's an opposition or what have you, that all gets fed back, and that's the expectation under things like service level agreements. It's an item, it's a mandated function we can perform from our own. It's an expected service to provide, and so we provide that articulated position that can confirm that all information supplied has been given due consideration. But at the end of the day, consent planners or consent officers and councillors are the decision makers, and whether or not that influences the decision or not is firmly left to the process. So there are those senses of tension, but we navigate those. That's our mandated function, is to navigate those in the best possible way, and that's a function itemised that we perform, that we report against. And can confirm and reconfirm anything our client councils need us to.
Through the chair, if I can just sort of bring this back to, there's the single word that I'd like to end on before passing back to the rec.
Can I ask Peter?
Kia ora, Mr. Chair. I was going to say thank you, Peter, for bringing them. We are in desperate need of pulling together at a iwi level to get what you've got. And thank you, Tanya, for yesterday. There was a great day. And welcome home to Ni Manaina of Waipatu. Another Waipatu. So Waipatu has had a long bearing in here because of the Parliament. Two members of Parliament way back in the 80s. So that's where the old trouble comes from.
Tēnā koe te papa e pita.
Yeah. So in terms of how we're going, you were lucky. You were one of the first two cabs off in the settlement time. So we're about 20 years behind. and we're about number 60. So with your settlement came what we would call the PSG. You have got that role to do under your Settlement Act, whereas we, or the Regional Council, has got 5 PSGs for the Hawke's Bay Regional Council. It's got another one for the Manawatu and one to Wellington, all out of Kahunungu. Like Kahunungu all over the place, visiting families everywhere. So we will keep that one to ourselves. So it's going to bring a problem in what the Crown has given us under our statutory acknowledgements at this level to do. So it's not RMA work, it is work to our Treaty Settlement Act. And you've got your two together, man, you're lucky. So I don't know what it was that's happening everywhere else in the Motu, that the Crown has thrown all this extra burden on us in our settlements. But we still have got the iwi underneath, which is Ngāti Kahunungu, the Tai Whenua, the Hapu, the Home Kāinga, Mana Whenua, Tangata Whenua. We still got them all, and we still got the Maori. Maori as well in there. So somewhere in all of that mess, we'll finish up as the PSG, having to pass judgment on our iwi, on our Tai Whenua, by going through the environment courts to the High Court. It's our statute duty. So it's not to knock this. We're really coming from, thanks for bringing it, it really has highlighted the differences that we got, but we definitely need you, especially in Hawke's Bay Regional Council. Not the whole of Kahunungu, unless Wairapa wants it, where the central, down there, around the Manawatu area want it. So kia ora, thanks very much for that.
That's okay.
We will be in touch, and you can stay down there a little longer.
Kia ora, Paua. Kia ora.
Tēnā koe e te pāpa, e pita, and you keep putting pressure on your mokopuna from the Manaina whānau.
Aye.
The word I wanted to finish on was manaakitanga.
Aye.
And in that regard, to thank our guests for bringing and revealing all that they have down here in terms of sharing he manaakitanga. The other part was manaakitanga in the sense of, I thank this committee, and I also thank the Māori Standing Committee, because this would not have arrived here without your directive to us within Council to bring it to this fore. So with that, I pass back to the Chair. I thank you for the discussion and the feedback. Councillor Hewitt, realising that this had to be driven by iwi in the first instance, this was merely an informational paper out of courtesy that this very much relates to the business at hand. But with that, I've only asked if you could receive and consider the report.
So would someone like to move?
I'm happy to second, Chair.
Councillor Graham, and second?
I'm happy to second, Chair.
Councillor Bailey. Councillor?
Firstly, Paddy, I'd like to thank you for your leadership. I got a text in the middle of that presentation from Councillor Barker saying this is a credit to your leadership, and I 100% agree to that, bringing this initiative to Hawke's Bay. And thank you very much to our guests from Waitau and from Waipatu. I live behind Waipatu, so I'm a little bit a part of them as well. So thanks for bringing it. It's just a marvellous thing that you've been able to put together. Having said that, I do tend to agree with my colleague, Mr. Paku beside me, the complexities of Hawke's Bay, not just in Māoridom, but in our Pākehā society as well. We like principalities here. We embrace them, you know, like Waharoa is a principality, Napier is, Hastings is, Central Hawke's Bay is, and we guard them jealously, stupidly. Kahununi tends to be a little bit the same, you know, they really jealously guard. We just did a thing on outstanding water bodies, and man, everyone else has got 3. Well, we have 300 that we would, you know, because everyone regarded their water bodies outstanding. So we've got a bit of a journey to get to, because we know we've got to unite. We know we've got to get on this journey. as Peter said, how we will get on it, I'm just not sure whether he goes through the courts as he's proposing, or whether we just come together in some other way. But we know that we have got to do a lot better than we are doing. Something that Mike Moore said to me yesterday, costs alone, costs in Kahanunu, within Kahanunu, and costs within our governance society overall, is just enormous and unnecessary. So we do need to embrace these new ideas, but you're kind of like bringing the electric bulb to us, and we're still on coal fires. So we've got a bit of, we have a little bit of distance to travel before we get anywhere near where you are, but it's a wonderful initiative, and I think Tom was getting close to how useful it would be. Thank you.
Yep, thank you, Chair. When I first heard of this up at Whakakī, I thought then I came driving back with the Chair, and I thought, geez, this is a brilliant idea. This is something that can really move us into a future which is far more convivial and trusting than what we've ever had in the past, I think. And I'm really excited that you've come back and given us, and we've had this discussion today. I'd like to thank you for coming up and doing that. And I'm also really thankful that you're prepared to share your intellectual property with us, because the easiest way to start that journey is to know that actually someone's been there already and we're just simply following in your footsteps. But of course, being Hawke's Bay and Ngāti Kahungunu, we'll jiggle it for our own purposes, but certainly the whole concept is there and it's been proven to work, and you've got to go, this is a far better way forward.
Any other comments?
Cup of tea's ready.
Then I'll put the motion that we receive the report. All those in favour?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Period.
Thank you.
So I think we might as well take a break at this point.
I'll see you in a few minutes.
15 minutes.
Thank you. I'll see you down.
We'll be back in business.
Thanks, Carl.
Will you join us?